Today on Alan's Astro, you've heard the hype. It's good for visual, it's good for imaging, it's lightweight, it's portable, it'll butter your bread and tie your shoes. But does it really live up to the hype? We're about to find out. Okay, let's dive in. As you can tell, I'm not in a dark sky area. All right, let's do a polar alignment real quick. Dodge all of the street lights and neighbors' porch lights. All right, time to drop in the Barlow. SVBony had sent this scope to me to test out and see what I thought about it. And after hearing some early reviews on it, I gladly accepted. Lock that down. I was very curious to see how it matched up to my Skywatcher SkyMax Maksutov. I told them I would give it an honest review, and whatever I said about the scope would be my own opinions. I am finally focused and locked in on Saturn. So the MK127 is a 127 millimeter aperture Maksutov style scope. It has a focal ratio natively of 11.8, which is going to put you in the realm of doing like lunar observations, planetary star clusters, really bright nebulas like Orion. You can see Andromeda a little bit, mainly just the core of Andromeda. But the interesting thing about this scope, and one thing that really sets it apart, so it actually comes with a 0.65 focal reducer that will bring the focal ratio down to 7.68 and the focal length to about 975 millimeters. Once you put on the focal reducer and it brings your focal ratio down, then you can definitely go after nebula. The other thing about the scope that's really good is that you can use it for terrestrial viewing and observations and imaging. Something like birding, if you're looking at like ducks or geese on the water or birds on a tree limb or something like that, it's actually quite good. I mean, this thing will reach out and touch you at 1500 millimeters. I live on a lake here, so there's always ducks and geese on the water, and I'll set it up on the pier and watch them. I think where this scope really can excel is places like science centers for doing like outreach programs. I could see, say for instance, like a high school astronomy program being able to buy several of these for the same price that they could buy a pretty decent refractor or like a big SCT. You could probably get 3 or 4 of these at least, if not more. And right there, you've got, the start of a good high school astronomy program or a science outreach program like a science center. It is fairly lightweight. It's portable. I've traveled with it several times. What I do is I've got like a big blue plastic bin, and I put some blankets down in there, put the scope in there, cover it up with a couple more blankets, and then I can put some of my eyepiece kits and things like that on top of it whenever I'm traveling. One of the extraordinary things about this scope is that it holds collimation very well. I've only had to collimate this one time, and I've probably used it several months now. So I've probably had maybe 7 or 8 good sessions with it, and I've only had to collimate it one time. So how do you know if you need to collimate the MK127? For this, you need to do what is known as a star test. So what is a star test? A star test on a telescope is a diagnostic method to evaluate its optical quality by observing a bright star or artificial star through high magnification, moving focus in and out to examine the diffraction pattern, usually in concentric rings or diffraction spikes, for imperfections like astigmatism, spherical aberration, or other collimation issues, revealing the scope's true performance and helping identify specific optical flaws. It's a sensitive test that helps astronomers fine-tune their telescope's optics for peak performance. For a star test, you'll need to center a bright star in your field of view. I recommend choosing a star near the zenith, but not close enough to where your scope is going to hit one of your tripod legs, of course. So if you've centered and focused on the bright star and you start to defocus and it looks like this, where the donut hole is nice and centered, your collimation is good, you're good to go. But if you start to defocus the star and it looks a little wonky or the donut hole is not properly centered, you definitely need to collimate. So let's talk about that. To collimate the MK127, simply remove the screw cap from the secondary mirror, and here you will see the 3 pair of collimation screws. These are standard push-pull screws, where one screw will push or pull the mirror into position, and the other screw locks down that adjustment point so it won't move. By the way, be careful not to touch the corrector plate glass around the secondary mirror when taking off the cap or adjusting the screws, because it will leave fingerprints. When collimating, you want to make very small adjustments to the push-pull screws to move the donut hole in the exact center of the diffraction ring. Each side of the ring needs to be equal in thickness. Once you have all sides of the ring even, you're good to go. You have achieved proper collimation. I recommend using video mode on your camera, or simply just make an adjustment and then take another photo, make another adjustment, and so forth until you have it centered. So a few things about this scope that really stand out to me. For one, the thing is made completely out of metal. The OTA body, the retaining rings, the back, the visual back, I mean, everything is made out of metal aside from the focusing knob. I can't even say that about my my Edge HD. It's a mixture of metal and plastic on the Edge HD, but this is all metal. It is built like a tank, and that really makes a difference, I think. I think that probably as far as cooling down or warming up, thermal expansion, things like that, it might be a little bit more resistant to it in comparison to a scope that might have some plastic pieces in it. It does still take this scope a little while to reach ambient temperature. Tonight it's about 35 degrees, and it took probably about an hour to an hour and a half for it to really, I think, kind of settle into ambient temperature to where I would stop having to fiddle with the fine focus knob. But that's another feature about this that is absolutely fantastic. You've got a coarse focus knob and a fine focus knob, and the fine focus knob is amazing. It is just buttery smooth. It feels like there's just no resistance to it. It's just kind of a joy to work with, and it really does make a huge difference, especially if you're doing like planetary. Tonight I was looking at Saturn, and I was having to use that fine focus knob to bring out the rings of Saturn, and eventually I could see some of the bands on Saturn, and that was kind of surprising because it's only about average seeing conditions tonight according to the Astrospheric app. By the way, if you're not familiar with the Astrospheric app, that's something that I certainly recommend. It's not always 100% accurate, especially over the past year or so, but it's a good option because it tells you wind speed, and it also tells you where your dew point is. So if you live in areas that are prone to dew or fog, it'll tell you, okay, yes, you definitely need to put on a dew heater strap. So let's look at a couple different configurations that you can use the MK127 in. Of course, you can use it for visual observation as well as imaging, but most people will use it with, say for instance, the 1.25 inch visual back, the 1.25 inch diagonal, and then of course your 1.25 inch eyepieces and possibly a Barlow. And of course you can do the exact same thing with the 2-inch accessories. You can put on the 2-inch visual back, the 2-inch diagonal, the 2-inch eyepieces, and if you need to, you can add other accessories like your acquisition computer and of course your guide scope and guide camera. Now a lot of people will also use this for astrophotography. Here we see the scope without the 0.65 reducer. Here it is with the 0.65 reducer. And then of course you just add the needed spacers, filter drawer, and then your camera. And then if you want to throw on your acquisition computer, your guide scope and guide camera. Here I put on the SVBony D-strap heater. This is really kind of crucial for where I live. There's a lot of dew here in my region in pretty much all seasons, so this is kind of a must-have. I really like the SVBony D-strap heater because it's got the control functions right on the cable. There's like a high, medium, and low setting, and so whenever I'm using this, I don't even have to worry about using the power output settings on the ASI Air. I guess if there's one thing that I was kind of surprised about with this scope is it does not actually come with a dew shield. Now granted, I know a lot of people don't use dew shields on these. They do kind of act as like a sail if there's any kind of wind out. You know, if it's more than like 2 mile an hour wind, it's going to shake your image. But I do recommend putting one of these on because the Maksutovs and the SCTs will fog up quite easy, especially if you're like me and you live here in the southeastern United States. So this was my attempt at using Aberration Inspector to check the star shapes. This was just a single subframe, which didn't really help, as the core of the Rosette Nebula didn't really show many stars in the corner of my image. Wasn't quite expecting that, but pretty much all Maksutov designs, while delivering really good contrast and sharpness, they'll have a little chromatic aberration, a little trefoil, and slight coma, depending on the quality of the lens. It's not as much chromatic aberration as, say, like a refractor in a lot of cases, and not as much coma as a Newtonian, but there will be some slight elongation in the far corners. You can see a little in the stacked image. This one is just stacked and unprocessed image here, but here I've stacked an image and processed it to show the star shapes, but you can see how well it corrects out in PixInsight in the processed image and with a slight crop. So overall I was quite happy with the image and the amount of, or the lack of, aberration. Getting focused, getting polar aligned, finding your target. What I do recommend to get started, if you're just setting up for the first time, you can do it at night, but it is easier, I think, to do it during the daytime. Set it up outside. That's very important. Don't try to do it inside, like through a window, because the window is going to refract the light and it's going to kind of throw off a lot of things, especially your focus. So go outside. Look for the most distant thing that you can see on the horizon, because you might be able to see like a single light source, light point way off in the distance, maybe like a radio tower or something like that. And it's going to be easier to find focus on something like that before you start shooting towards the stars. Your focus is going to be a little bit different from, if you're focusing on that radio tower light in comparison to when you try to focus on a planet or a star. But it will at least get you in the ballpark. It'll be a lot quicker to find focus that way. Use your guide scope and your guide camera as your main camera. You're going to get focused, and then you're going to find your target. After you get polar aligned, of course, it'll help you polar align, and then you can find your target. Once you're on target on your guide scope and guide cam, then if you want to put in your eyepiece, or if you want to put in the an imaging camera, that's a good time to do it at that point. And then you can get focused into your imaging camera. Okay, so I am locked in on Saturn. So let's see if I can actually make out some of the bands again on Saturn. Oh, yes indeed. Obviously this light is not helping, but you can certainly see it. I can see the rings. I can see some of the bands. And I'm not sure what moon that is. That might be Titan. I can definitely see one of the moons to the far right of Saturn. Wow. And for just average seeing conditions, I'm really surprised that I can see some of the bands on Saturn. Now, granted, this is with the 2x Barlow here, which that takes the 1500 millimeter native focal length and brings it up to 3000 millimeters. That makes a huge difference. So here you can see what Saturn looks like on my phone. You can tell how wobbly the atmosphere was, but you can definitely see the rings. It's kind of hard to see the bands in this image just simply because of the compression in YouTube. So this was what it looks like after I just debayered in PIP, and there's really no processing other than just debayering and just converting to an AVI. You can see a little bit of the band structure here. It's pretty close in with the rings. This is what it looks like on the moon. I really enjoy using this on the moon. It just delivers super sharp images. Clarity is just top notch. The 1500 millimeter focal length is a really good focal length for the moon, and if you add in a Barlow, you know, it'll bring you in nice and tight to the craters and things like that. All in all, this scope has performed way beyond my expectations. I guess I was kind of expecting it to be more along the lines of like my Skymax 109, but this, like I said, this just kind of blows the doors off the Skymax, in my opinion. This is a scope that, say for instance, you know, if I had, you know, a son or a daughter that was getting into visual astronomy or wanted to do some, you know, first imaging, this would probably be a pretty good option. I would probably do like a 400 millimeter refractor first, you know, some kind of budget refractor first, and then step up to this. The price is right for it, and for an imaging Maksutov at 1500 native focal length, that also comes with a reducer. It's collimatable from the front, and it has the dual speed focuser. That's pretty hard to beat, especially in a Maksutov design. And at this price, there's not a whole lot that can really compete with it. Some of the other Maksutovs are going to be actually more expensive in some cases and not have this many features. As far as matching it with a mount, I do recommend something like the ZWO AM3, which is what I'm using here, or an AM5. But yeah, this is a fantastic scope. It's a really good design. I think that SVBony has really stepped up their game, and they're making a statement with this, and also, like, say for instance, their SV555. I also did a review on that earlier. If you want to check out that video on the moon, this is really hard to beat. This is a true joy to use on the moon, and views of Jupiter are just absolutely fantastic, especially when you pop in like a 2x Barlow with this. It's really quite eye-popping to do some planetary with this. So all in all, I would certainly recommend this. I can see this becoming kind of a staple in the astro community. You know, there's a few scopes out there that are still considered you know, like a budget range scope, but they have really good performance. Say for instance, the Astrotech 72 ED2, depending on if you're using the reducer or not, you know, somewhere around 400 millimeters. It gives you sharp focus in the center. The edges aren't, you know, as good as other scopes. It's not going to be as good as Takahashi or whatever. But it's just one of those scopes that have just kind of become kind of a staple in the astro community for just getting started. And I would certainly put this one in there, in that category as well. So I'll leave you with a couple of the processed images here that I took with the MK127. Of course, this is the core of the Rosette Nebula. After putting on the focal reducer, it just really makes this nebula pop, and I think this image actually came out pretty good. It shows what the MK127 can do on nebula. And of course, another obligatory shot of the moon. I always enjoy exploring around on the moon. There's always something new to see if you just bother to poke around, and the MK127 delivers such amazing crisp views of the moon. And pound for pound, I'd say this is it's actually a very good scope. It's such a good value, and certainly one that I could recommend. So a quick channel update. I'll soon be starting my new channel, Alan's Astro, and adding more astro related content, tutorials, reviews, live streams, and just for fun video for the space nerds out there. So be sure to also like and subscribe to Alan's Astro if you want to see more content like this, and I hope to see you there soon. Until then, keep looking for that strange light in strange places.